Yeah, let's talk to Mike Neeme. By the way. Oh, we're live. We are live. What's going on, gang? Hey, here from the new office. Hey, everybody, keep it down.
Yeah.
Sorry, they're crazy back there. But no, hey, we're in the process of getting everything moved in. They're what?
I said a plant or two would really pull that together.
Oh, we got it all lined up. R&R doesn't mess around. It's kind of crazy. It's like I had a role which I was developing like satellite offices, and it was like piece by piece. No, they're not like that. They're like, hey, we got a whole order coming in. All the desks, all the chairs, all the furniture, all the plants, everything. It's all coming all at one. They're gonna bring it in. They're gonna set it up. Everything. It's like, all right, man. So right now we're just doing with what we got, just to get in and get it done and get together as a team. So, but yeah. So we got Andrew Teal, Tony. Like usual, is gonna be late, but Andrew, has been around. I mean, for a while there. It's kind of weird. It's like a changing of the guard a little bit, Andrew. I know you've probably seen it, but we all had our kind of moment there. After COVID, with Cassandra and everything, where we were all kind of LinkedIn people, and then it's kind of changed a little bit. But we've always kept that connection. When you find somebody that's smart and that you learn from, you always keep that. And I know Tony just doesn't have a lot of friends, so he tries to get as many as he can. You know what I mean? He tries to keep them, and I don't blame him. I can make fun of him because he's not on right now, but he'll be on here in a second. He's on his way back from work. We're in the trenches. That's what this show's all about, right? So. But Teal brings a lot to the table. Andrew, give us some background. It probably would take the whole show, honestly, but give us a quick overview of what you've done, what you're doing now.
Sure. So high level, I've always been involved in the industry on and off. Started when I was about 8 as an unpaid lumper in a family. Currently have a Class A CDL with tanker endorsement, which probably makes me a little bit rare for a lot of folks in the office. I've worked for very large 3PLs, small mom and pop brokerages, large asset carriers, drove for small carriers. So I've kind of seen all sides of the transportation coin, and, always looking to learn, intellectually curious, like you said before, TJ, about, surrounding yourself with people you can learn from. And that's probably one of the things I love the most is learning from folks. And if I can share what I know, awesome. If not, I'll be quiet in the corner and you just teach me.
Yeah, and I think that's key. I feel like I say it on every show, but I try to make sure people understand. I don't continue to do this podcast because I want to come on and tell people what I know. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like there's some things I can share. But a lot of people that really gravitate towards me are entry level people. You know what I mean? Like maybe not get them from management, but the main reason I do it is because the people. I mean, there are times I get off these shows and I'm just like, that was awesome. I learned that. I learned this. Because you get. If you're going to be successful, you got to really be strong in your niche and what you can and, focus on. And so, somebody comes in that knows a little bit of international or a shipper or a carrier or a driver or whatever it is. And they say things and everything just kind of excuse me. Well, fuck it. It's handle it in a minute, but everything clicks. You know what I mean? So things start to click together and you're like, that makes sense. That makes sense. And you're thinking to yourself, God, I've been in this 10 years. You know what I mean? But like, you still come away with something. And I try to tell my new people that, like, do not, and I think it's a sign that they're going to be good, because the people that come to you when they're new and say, man, I really feel like I just feel dumb. I feel like I can't get it all. I can't feel like, it's because it's and you never will. And until you accept that and take it all, through the funnel and filter to what you got to focus on and just be open to learning and put it in your long-term memory, that's when you really start to succeed. And you can't, a lot of industries, you can come into a job and just tackle it, right? Get the whole thing down, everything, know it all in and out. But here, you never really will.
No. And I think that kind of lines up with two things that I've actually mentioned a lot lately is a lot of people in our industry, they come to the industry and say, you'll start out in brokerage, right? And you'll work your way through brokerage and you'll tend to stay within that area of the industry, or carriers or a shipper or, a supply chain guy, right? It's always interesting to see people that kind of have moved from one to another and learn from both. I got to my first duty station in the Navy. I had a senior chief sit me down and he said, this is really important. Listen. And he said, there's 3 types of linguists and you can apply it to whatever you do. It doesn't matter. There's a first type that comes in and treats it as a 9-to-5 job and they just do what they got to do to, collect a paycheck and go home. There's a second type that comes in and is super arrogant about things and says, "Hey, I'm a supply chain professional. I'm a broker." They're more interested in the title and the clout than they are the job itself. And then there's the third type who wants to learn as much as possible upstream, downstream of whatever they're doing, everything they can learn about the mission, everything they can learn about that. And those are the ones that end up being really, really special. Right now, you get to choose which one of those three you're going to be. And I'll tell you, and I've told this to when I let technicians, when I let other people in the industry, is it's really, really hard to change once you made that choice. So
Yeah.
if I go to work for you, TJ, and I decide to be number one and just an 8 to 5er, it'll be really hard for me to become number three, that high level performer.
Is that an
Without,
offer?
is it what?
Is that an offer?
No, I'm just saying it gets harder to do that. And that's not
Yeah,
from a
you're right.
discipline thing. It's just people tend to trust the person they know when they first meet them, and then as you progress in an organization, all of a sudden it's like, hey, all of a sudden Andrew's different. I don't know if I really believe that yet or not, and it gets harder. That's all. So if you come through the door as that number three employee, it's like, hey, this is great. I'm getting after what I need to get after, so I'm driving value, but I need to reach out to TJ because he works in billing, and I need to learn what happens after I get this load moved, and I got to talk to
Yep.
Tony because he works in sales, and I got to figure out, well, how do I get my work? Exactly. Those types of employees, if you start that way, I think people tend to see you that way through your entire career at that particular company, and it's easier. It's just easier than
Yeah.
to be seen.
I love that you said that, and I talk about it all the time, and it's hard because it's not, where I'm at in my career, what I've been able to do is I don't want to use the word luck because it took a lot of hard work, but the timing, in which I came into the company I came in at allowed me to just basically come in with a work ethic, right? And then because I had that, I was able to, excel, and I had no choice. I had to learn the billing side. I had to learn the tracking side, the carrier coverage, the account management, the sales. We had to do it all. Not only that, but we had assets, right? So then for a good couple of years, I'm over on the asset side, dispatching. I started just dispatching drivers, right? Or first, I just started fighting backcalls for them. Now I'm dispatching. Then I'm operations manager over assets. Then I go back to brokerage, and I'm overseeing both because we're growing. And that path is hard to come by, because I will say it kicks your ass. I mean, it does. There's a lot going on. You get thrown through the fire. Our owners at the time, we're small. We're in the office, and they were busy. They just kind of gave you that freedom, and there was times you get frustrated because you needed help, but like you had to figure it out on your own, and you got kicked around, and you lost accounts, and you failed, and so now you see a lot of people that there's a lot of value there. So when I finally started branching out and going somewhere else, it was like, TJ, you have like, knowledge or skills of a lot of things that people, like a package that people don't have. You know what I mean? To be able to go from a smaller, company and see the growth of that and be involved in the whole thing, sit in those meetings and talk about the revenue, talk about the hiring, the commission structure, the new office, all little ins and outs of things. To me, I always just felt it was like just a lot, wearing a lot of hats, but it really does bring a lot of value. And I think, but no matter what, you got to get to a point where, because you can only do that for so long. You got to get to a point where you start to really kind of narrow and my training then, and my development of people is more or less, I want them to go through some of that, because that live training or that learning for failure is good, but I know a lot of ways to stay ahead of it now. Right. And so I can help them, be proactive and say, hey, if you do this, this is what's going to happen. Trust me, I've been there, if this happens. And so that's my goal on it. On top of the fact that, it makes it easier when I surround myself with people, like Anthony Darnell or, all these other people that we connect with and know, because it allows for more learning, and it keeps you bought in, right? When things get boring or they get dull, this industry never will. So when they do, you tend to lose maybe motivation or whatever it is, but when you're always learning, it's a good push.
Yeah, I love the forever learning mentality, because that's how you grow as a leader. That's how you grow as a human. That's how you grow with empathy for people. For the longest time, I didn't have that. My wife kind of beat that into me, because compassion wasn't something I ever had, because I thought that you are a product of your choices. So if you're in a really bad spot, you made a bunch of terrible choices. So, you know, it sucks to be you.
Yeah.
It's really hard to change that mindset, because I don't think a lot of people get that you aren't a product of you aren't just a product of your choices. There's a lot more there.
And I think you touched on that, not to call you the
I froze up
William
again.
of transportation, but the best leaders, the best operators, the best people I've ever been around, doesn't matter the role, doesn't matter whatever, they've always been intellectually curious, whether that's about their own industry or about what's upstream, downstream of whatever part of the machine they are, but also just other people. You know, I found the best leaders are intellectually curious about the other people they work with. And I had well, she's probably retired now, but she once told me, like, you don't manage people, you manage personalities. And the only way you are ever going to be able to be a leader is to understand that person's personality, what motivates them, and things like that. You find out by asking questions. That's the only way you're gonna be good at this at all, being a leader and things like that. So to Tony's point about empathy and choices, and yeah, you are to a degree a product of your choices, but I'm probably the poster child for sometimes things outside of your choice impact the choice you're allowed to make, right?
Absolutely.
You're a product of your choices, but you're defined by your response.
Right.
Exactly.
To what to the end of it, because the biggest thing I find too is and I'm dealing with it now is I got some good people, man, and they're smart, and I feel like I have more faith in them than they have in themselves.
Yeah.
And that's hard, because it's like, how do you get them to have that confidence? They second guess themselves. I'm like, I don't know how many times I'm like, go out and fuck something up. Like, I tell I'm dead serious. And you know what? This applies to everything in life, because I tell I coach my kids, now, 10, 11 years old, and, it starts to get competitive. And at that age, now you're in kid pitch, and you're learning situations, right? And you're learning, and they're thinking, and there's a lot. It takes the game from, being where, like, okay, you only go to this base or whatever. Now there's all these situations in baseball, right? It gets overwhelming, and they don't play well because they're overthinking. And I tell them, I said, go out and make a mistake. I will never get on you if you dive for a ball and miss it. I'll never get on you if you go to try to make a play. Somebody go make a play. And if you mess it up, guess what? Boom. That's a great way to learn, because you're competitive, right? So we talk about it. You're not in trouble. We just say, hey, all right, so this is what you did there. Hey, next time, remember when that ball comes to you, right, to your left side, right? If it's coming to your left side, use your momentum, work to second base. Don't turn and try to make a play at third or come across. You got the easy out at second. Take that and just eat that, and let's go move on. Simple things, right? That you learn, but you're trying to make a play. So I'd love to see you try to make a play, spin, try to get it to third, whatever it is, because you're trying to do something. We can learn from that. But if you are second guessing yourself, you end up muffing the ball in the first place. You never even get it in your glove. And that holds people back. And it's hard to be so that they see it as constructive. You constantly have to remind them, I've got faith in you. You got this. These learning moments are great. Absorb them. And use that to where, you're going to get to the point where you have the confidence to make this decision on your own. I trust it. If I know what's going on, I see everything. If something's going on and it's going to go down, like, I'll jump in. But for now, you make the call.
Yeah. And you see opportunity like that is just in our industry, transportation, logistics, supply chain, whatever you want to call it, the opportunity to go make that play, to go make that decision. I mean, if you don't see that for you 10 times a day, you're not looking at all.
Exactly.
It is that opportunity to do that is abundant. And I don't care what level you're at. If you're a day one broker that came in with a large class at some of the places we won't name, or if you're a very niche broker at some of the places, we know, and I've worked at, where, a single move is $60,000 because you're doing oversized, overdimensional, cross-border, things like that. It's available. It's out there. And I think people, they get a little bit nervous, and then, not that this is some leadership guru thing, but it's just something I've learned is, somebody come to you, hey, we had this situation. What do I do? Well, what would you do? And the best thing to say to them is, that's exactly what I would do. Even it's not 100%, as long as you're not in trouble, let them go and do that. Let them understand that their decision process is the right one, and then they'll learn to trust it. It's like having kids sometimes,
So
I guess.
last point I'll make, because this will be a good.
You're good.
Am I breaking it?
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit. I didn't hear that.
Yeah, you're fine.
Does that mean breaking up? Okay. All right. Last point I'll make, and then it's going to be a good segue into what the discussion's going to be on. But I've described it to a lot of people. That was what the handle it thing was I was wearing so many hats, and I had people come to me, and I know at first I just thought they wanted me to do it for them, but then I realized it was because they didn't want to be the one to make the decision and it go wrong, and then it be on them, right? So they would come to me all the time, and they'd say, "Hey, I don't know, I got the situation right." I'm thinking to myself, at first you're kind of like, just like, you can't even go wrong. Just send something, anything. But that's where I started the handle it thing. And I'd say, go handle it. At first you get that look like, well, I mean, it's kind of rude or, whatever. And I'd be like, but I want you to come back when you're done. Tell me what you did. And they would come back all pumped up, right? Every time, because I knew now if there's a situation they brought to me and I was like, ooh, yeah, let me jump in on this. But stand behind me and watch how I deal with it. But most of the time I could tell them to go handle it. They knew what to do. They know what to do. They just don't want to make that mistake yet. And they don't realize that, hey, this is a game of failing. It's just like logistics and baseball are so similar. You know what I mean? Like you hit 300, you're failing 70% of the time. And so it's like,
it'll make you a lot
that's
of money.
Hall of Fame.
Yeah. You're gonna make a lot of money.
But I tell them, like, when somebody strikes out, okay, I tell these kids all the time too, when you watch the major leaguers, when they strike out, they don't strike out and go pout and get all mad. Now, there's times that they don't like the call and maybe get mad at the umpire, but they're not mad because they struck out. They're walking back, and if you watch them, they're like methodical about it. They're thinking, they're in their head going, all right, shit, I thought he was going to come curveball in that one. All right, he's going here. And he goes in and he's making sure he's watching every pitch after that to see what this guy's doing, right? He got me on that one. What did he do? Right? They're not thinking about how they failed. They're thinking about how they can get better and what they can do to adjust and adapt to come back better the next time.
What did they learn?
Right? Because failure is part of it.
What'd you say, Teal?
I said it's basically, what did I learn from that last pitch?
Right.
That the next one I can hit.
Does he scratch his nose every time he throws a slider? Does he?
We're not going to get into the University of Michigan.
But they look for those clues. They're looking, do they twist their ball clockwise when they're throwing heat? I mean, there's all of these little signals and clues that, especially at the young age, you can catch on to, and they see that. The kids that really study the game see that. They don't even have to be the biggest hitter, but when they become tuned into those little fine details, they start becoming consistent, and consistent is better than home run.
Yep. Because they're students of the game. That's what it is in logistics. Always learning. Always. That's not about, I could see those signs better, or I'm better at catching those. It's just about paying attention. What are you doing in the dugout? You dicking around in the dugout, or are you standing there watching the pitcher? When you're not doing something, you're not covering a load, or you're not working on a load. What are you doing? Are you dicking around, or are you listening and absorbing things and learning more? Yeah. All you got to do is just be aware and have your head on a swivel. And like Andrew said it perfect at the beginning, the opportunities are there. If you don't see them, that's on you.
Yeah, and I think to kind of pull it back to what we do for a living, everybody's going to have a truck fall off. Everybody does daily, almost daily. But what did you realize that, hey, for the third time in a row, this truck keeps falling off? What are you learning about your carrier vetting or your selection or whatever? You know what? Next time I'm going to skip that guy. I'm going to go to the next guy down the line and not have that truck fall off. Again, it's not just about how you handle the problem, but it's anticipating the problem so you never have to hit it again. So if I'm working with people that are new to the industry or anything like that, is, hey, here's my hit list, right? These are the things I look out for right away before I even have a conversation. These are the things I want to know. If I'm selling freight, I better know my appointment times. I better know if they're open. I better know if a swing door, roll door, those are things you just have to have, right? And I get it. Your first couple of times you might forget to ask that from your customer, but if you're not picking up on, these are the things my carriers always ask me, I better know that ahead of time. That's when we have a conversation about, hey, are you picking this up? Are you learning?
And ask those questions.
So fail. Go ahead, Tony. But I'd say I would fail. The only time we'll ever have an issue with you failing is if you continue to fail at the same thing over and over and over again after we have
it. We call that fail forward. That's what that's called. Right. Fail forward. Fail fast and fail forward. That way you can try something else. But I think somebody was saying the other day, there was like the optimal efficiency rate of failure is like 88%. So like it's 84%. It was 16% failure was like the optimal efficiency so that you can get stuff done. I don't know where I read that or saw that but it was just a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, it's shocking, because if you're not failing, you're not trying anything new. You're just rubber stamping stuff and going on, and you're a hamster in the wheel, and that is going to get you nowhere. That you're not learning anything by not failing. If you're not failing, you're not trying, and you better get out there and fail fast and fail forward.
But it's strategic. I always tell people that. It's like, a lot of failure comes from risks. Now you mitigate risks that you don't want to take, but there's risks you got to take sometimes, right? In order to grow. And I always tell them that, you take those strategic risks, right? You analyze the situation first and say, hey, what's the worst outcome? What's the best outcome? Is this worth doing? And then you see it through, and then you learn the process of it. And then next time it's not even a risk. It's actually something you already know how to do then.
I had a guy,
you may see it as a risk.
I had a guy that drove for me, and, we're in Northern Indiana. We're 95 miles from downtown Chicago, and we're in logistics. So guess where you're going to end up, right? Everybody's going to end up in Chicago.
Chicago Rail Yard.
Frequently. No way. There's no drayage. This is steel. We were hauling steel. So we were delivering to stamping plants, etc. But this guy every time would get mad at traffic in Chicago. And I'm like, Bill, you have to understand that when you go to Chicago, expect traffic. Stop expecting to drive through free and clear.
Yeah.
When you expect it and then it happens, you are not disappointed. But when you have in your mind that you're going to drive through free and clear, and then there's a construction or a lane narrows or a backup or just people being stupid, then you're going to understand that that's just normal. And then your expectations are met.
Yeah. I think that goes to something, and you just touched on that. It's like the third rail of trucking, which is, we talk about turnover and we talk about retention. There are a lot of bills out there that don't realize that part of driving a truck is you're going to be on a dock waiting. Part of driving the truck is traffic. Part of the driving of the truck is navigating a truck stop and pumping your fuel and things like that. And I think sometimes people assume the job is vastly different if they change the color of the truck they drive. Trucking is trucking. There are certain things that you will run into. Detention is one of them. Cancel loads, bad attitudes, things like that. Hey, you're not going to get to wear your flip-flops in the steel mill. I'm sorry. That has nothing to do with the fact that you drive for company A, not company B. It's got to do with the fact you can't wear flip-flops in the steel mill. And I think that's something in our industry we haven't necessarily done a really good job about socializing. We talk about you get paid to be, a tourist, and you get to go to do all these cool things, and you're your own boss and things like that. Well, yeah, that's part of it. But the flip side of that coin is you're going to have days where you're sitting on the dock for 4 hours, 5 hours. You're going to have days where some other person is sleeping at the fuel island and taking her 30 when you need to fuel and get down the road. We don't do a really good job of maybe managing those expectations on the front end. And I think that drives a lot of our turnover, and it drives a lot of our retention issues.
Well, Ingrid Brown made a great point too, though. It's invaluable. Like the amount of value I got from being on the asset side was huge, because not only did I do drivers that don't know what they're doing frustrate you, but the ones that are great, I learned so much from, man. I mean, they just, there's some guys that just get it, and they've been through that, right? They know, if there's some guys that just won't go to Chicago, or they won't go through here or whatever, right? Or there's guys that know, hey, I'll take that load, but if I'm going around, I'm not going on this highway. I'm dropping down around Chicago, right? Or to go to Wisconsin. So give me a delivery for this time, right? They're already ahead of the game, right? They're learning, but they didn't put it on somebody else. They don't bitch about it, because, as an owner operator, especially, I mean, you're an owner, right? So like the fact that, detention is part of it, not only do you mark down, I mean, there's guys that know what shippers they want to go to and which ones they don't, right? Mm-hmm. And they'll take less money to go to a shipper they know that they can get in quicker, because they're thinking business wise, hey, I'm in and out quicker. I get on another load on this paycheck, because every load I get in that's turned in with the POD by Tuesday, I'm paid on that paycheck, right? I had guys that would run. At one point I was getting like, oh my God, it was stupid. They're for $5-6 a mile to go out of Ohio to PA, right? And there was guys that were like, well, what's my backhaul? I'm like, I got a backhaul for you. You know, it's $1.20 mile, right? Okay. Well, you're picking up in Reading, PA to go back to Ohio. That's great, but everything's heavy. Everything's these dudes will be like, hey, the good guys, they were like, hey, give me that for $5.80 a mile. I'll run it. I'll deadhead back that way, and I'll do 2 more of them. I'll get 3 in on this check. That'll give me this much or whatever. I'm looking at fuel. I'm looking at miles. They got it all nailed down, right? And they've learned from the situations they've been through, and that's what you got to do. Is like, don't put it on somebody else. You know, don't put it on somebody else. Put it on you. You know, and if you're a carrier that, like to your point earlier, Andrew, and you hate brokers, then just like what you said, you know, if a guy falls off a load, don't use that carrier. Don't use that broker. There are some great brokers out there, and they'll take care of you. I mean, really. I mean, that's their goal. I mean, I know some of the best carousels guys I freaking tried to hire to come in and be managers to run care. They're like, no, I make so much just being a carousels rep, just doing this, because they take their carriers out to dinner, right? They go golf with them. You know, I went over to one buddy's house down in Indy. He's been it forever, and he's got this big bottle of like this expensive whiskey. One of his carriers sent him. You know, he takes care of them. You know, and those guys, you know, do well. But if you're just going to go on the board and just take your chances, you're going to get burned.
Too much freight moves in this country for all brokers to be bad, and too much freight moves in this country for all carriers to be bad. And the sooner people realize that, the better. But you kind of touched on something both of you did for me. When we look at the market we're in right now, and rates are suppressed, depressed, whatever you want to call it, you got to think. You got to open your window. You got to open your average, right? I don't think about today. What am I going to do this week? How do I set myself up so my week looks good? And TJ, to your point, those guys that have been in it a while and they're really good, and they kind of understand that, well, I'll go up there for my 580 or 520 a mile, and they're looking at their average instead of, if I don't make at least $3 a mile every mile, that would be awesome, right? But if I can take a load for $2 a mile to make $7 on the next one, and I'm just choosing numbers, but you know what I mean? You start looking out farther, you start driving your truck 30 feet down the road instead of 3 feet, you're going to do better. And
Look
if you
past your headlights.
30 to 40 feet down the road instead of 3 feet, you're going to do better.
Yeah.
And those brokers need to look past their headlights. Drivers need to look past their headlights. Shippers need to be ready when they call the truck in to load it.
Yeah.
There's just
so it's funny, the good drivers too, they'll want to know it. We had this lane, you know, for Ford from Michigan down to Louisville, down in the Louisville plant, and it was cheap. We had to take it, you know, it was a contracted rate. And the one guy, you know, he's just a veteran. His name Randy. I hope he's listening. He always usually does. But he's awesome. And he's like, well, let me run it a couple times and see. I think I might be able to make it work. I go, what do you mean make it work? He goes, well, let me see. So he runs it a couple times, and he gets it. You know, the rate's not great or whatever, and he does it. He calls me and said, hey, can I get 2 more trailers down here? I go, what do you mean? Well, I got out of the truck, went and talked to the guy. You know, where they put the trailers, by the time they get them, because they put them in order, right? So it's not always that it's empty or not. Sometimes it's whether they can get to it, whether the other trailer's been picked up first before they can get to it. He said, but I talked to him about a spot over here under the bridge. We're going to start parking our trailers over there. If we could do that, he goes, I can get 2 round trips in a week and be back in. I won't have to deliver then on Monday. I could deliver on Friday, be home, and then pick up the other load on Monday instead of delivering and not being able to do that. And he said, what do you think about that? I'm like, holy shit, who'd you talk to? He's like, oh, his name's James. You haven't talked to him? Down right at the dock. Oh, yeah, it's a great dude. Oh, yeah, we shot the shit forever. We walked over there. We looked at it. He said, oh, yeah, you got the space. He goes, just let me know whenever you get in there, whatever. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'll let you know. I mean, he figured it out.
You got to look at it like a business. You got to look at it as network efficiency. And one of the biggest misconceptions in our industry is that the Schneider Swifts, the Knights, the Werners of the world, they have really high paying freight. And that's what allows them to do what they do. No, they're just really super efficient at identifying those opportunities that you just discussed, TJ. How do I get more turns? How many turns per week can I get on a truck? How many turns per week can I get on a box? And then finding, you know, those areas of the country that are excess and sink and getting in and out of those as quickly as possible, as often as possible, to make those, just like you said, hey, I'm just going to deadhead. I'm not going to take that $1.20 a mile. I get the $1.20 a mile, buys me my fuel, but it burns my clock. And to me, I want to use as much of my clock on the $5.20 a mile freight as I can.
Yep.
So I'm just going to boogie back, understand that
especially in PA
for $2.75, but I'm doing it every day and a half instead of every 3 days.
Yeah. You have to be good at
Especially
running a
PA, where
business.
the toll road charges you by weight.
Yep.
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 Yeah, I
I
tell
have-
Just be
everybody wants
smart.
to buy
And
a
so
truck.
I
They
think
gotta,
that's a good segue into.
go ahead.
Go Tony or TJ.
I just
That's
said
a good segue into. You're breaking it out, Tony. Sorry, I'm trying to be with you here, but a good segue into kind of what this discussion is. You know, the 2023 fact, like it's, you know, originally we are going to talk about some things, but I think, you know, having Teal on, I want to take advantage of what he's got, you know, in his brain. And, you know, there's a lot of things that you could complain about. There's a lot of things that, you know, the situation I'm in, you know what I mean? Like I took on something that this is hard, man. I mean, it's a blessing to have somebody say, hey, go find the office you want, right? Go find the employees you want. Go find the furniture you want. You know, we're going to set you up, right? Because we've got faith in you. But then, you know, you're in a market right now where you got to have business. I mean, you got to bring it in. I mean, you got to get creative. You got to, I mean, now you got the pressure on you. And that's their strategy. I love that. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, you know, you got to figure out a way to make it happen. And you can't sit back and focus on what could have happened or what you could have done or what if it's anybody else's fault. You know, I think about it from this standpoint. You know, I would have conversations with Shipper. I thought about it the other day, you know, because I kind of got butthurt, you know, because I'm talking to this guy, and I remember a couple of years ago he called me, and I was putting assets on his freight, and he called. He said, "Hey, can I have a conversation with you? Head of freight, big head of supply chain for this big company." He's like, "We're getting burned. I mean, we're just getting killed right now on rates. Can you help me out? Can I have a discussion with you on rates and let's work together?" He's like, "These are discussions we need to have so that, you know, when you got, you know, right now you have the advantage and we have it, we can circle back on it. And, you know, we can help each other out and have a partnership for a while, right?" And I was like, "No, that makes sense, right? I believe in that as well." So I have that conversation and we work on the rates. And then next thing you know, now guy won't even answer my call, won't answer my emails. When he does, he's like, "Oh no," you know, and I'm thinking, you know, you get kind of, you're like, dude, I had that conversation with you. You came to me hurting, right? And I've been over for you to help you out, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, it's business. That's how it is. You never know what's going to happen, but having that mindset and using that, right? How can I use that? How can I use that situation to help me? Right. So now I reach out to people and they go, "Oh, well, you know, this or that." And I go, "You know what? I actually am big on having conversations with people with shippers about rates, right? So we have a sustainable relationship, something that we can all benefit through the ups and downs and whatnot." And you know, it's disappointing because I have a lot of them that come back and don't reciprocate that, but I believe in it. I truly do. And I've got examples of where I've been burned on it, but I'm always going to stand by it. And I can use that to my advantage now. Now this person's thinking to themselves, all right, this isn't some, you know, basic level TQL rep talking to me. This isn't some like certain person talking to me. This is somebody that's like ready to have a conversation about how. Think back to, you know, 2 years ago when you were just getting your ass kicked and your boss was all over you, right? Would I be a good asset to have at that point, right? To help you out? And I'm willing to do that. And I've done it before. I just, you know, right now, you know, just need a shot. I don't even talk about rates. I just need a shot to get in and help you out. And that way we could build that. But there's no way to know that unless you do. And if you're just going to go after whatever makes your boss happy right now, then you're going to have for cheap rates or whatever, but then your service is going to fail. When things turn, those guys are going to burn you, and they're going to burn you bad, and you're going to either lose your job or be in the same spot you were in, because it all goes up and down.
Yeah. And, you know, 2 years ago when everybody was screaming on the shipper side, we got to have relationships. And now everybody on the carrier side is, you know, hey, we got to have relationships. You know, we get this wave here, right? And you've been in it long enough. You ride that 18-month trucking cycle wave, maybe 36 months. So how can we mitigate that? How do we make those troughs and peaks not as drastic from one to another? And I think, and I hope that lessons are being learned here in the last, let's call it 3 years, the last 36 months, because they changed so quickly. And it's not like they changed a little bit. They changed a lot, because lanes that were going for 225 a mile, suddenly I had guys laughing at 6 a mile, right? No, not doing it. So my hope is as we come out of this, we get a little bit better on that, but also having some discussions around, just to your point, TJ, of, well, what does a cost plus look like? Let's get away from the per mile.
Yeah.
Let's go to cost plus, or let's go to hours, right? You know, that's a big thing. Talk about paying drivers, you know, salary or by the hour and things like that. And ultimately, that's what you're doing when you pay by the mile, because we all know the truck's going to run 55 to 60 miles an hour. So in an hour, we're going to do, $120 to the truck. Just choose numbers. So maybe we have some conversations about that. And it's finding progressive and forward-thinking shippers and carriers that want to have the conversation, that understands that all decisions have to be beneficial to both sides. And when you do that, when you have mutually beneficial decisions and situations like that, you can't lose. Because why
No,
would
and I think, yeah, and I think the decisions that some of them make, I think what I see the dynamic is, a CFO doesn't understand the industry, transportation, right? He's looking at all numbers. He doesn't understand this or that, right? And then when Tony's over budget, or somebody's over budget, and they're asking, why are you paying so much? Why are you paying? And you're trying to describe it to him, right? You're trying to, let them know that, hey, this is what it is. Sales is promising this. I can't even keep up. I mean, like we're there, whatever. At the end of the day, then when rates turn around, it's like you always think about who burned you, and that's how your reactions are. So you never think about the people that did well for you. So you had carriers that did well for you, but because you got burned so much, you're going, I'm gonna get them back. I'm gonna get these rates back, right? And then you leave people on the wayside that were actually there to help you. And so my biggest thing is like, hey, this person said, this, and this. I know they're BSing me. I know they're just saying this. I'm taking that and I'm going to the VP of supply chain. I'm going to the CFO and I'm saying, hey, this is what your decision maker for this site for transportation said. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them for saying it, right? Because they're looking at the standpoint of, hey, they probably got kicked around here the last couple of years, right? I want to talk to, if I'm sourcing a carrier for a lane, if I'm doing this, I want to talk to somebody who's thinking future, right? Who's thinking outside of just maintaining their own job or being in good light with their boss. I want to talk to somebody that says, hey, what do you think about having a sustainable relationship in which, a cost plus model, right? An hourly model, especially on the local or the shorter runs, right? Things like that, where you could become not only, and then you start to describe to an executive or CFO what a shipper of choice is and how much money that saves you. It's unbelievable, right? These brokers that don't want to charge for detention and don't want to charge for layovers. Well, guess what you're doing? You're hurting your shipper.
Yep.
Because the more you do that, the more data they have to sit down and look and say, hey, whoa, why are we paying so much in detention? We need to get more efficient at this, right? If we aren't a shipper of choice, people will take a lower rate just to go somewhere else.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because they don't want to come in and get loaded for us. That costs us money. That costs us capacity. It costs us trucks. And it all adds up, right? How many loads are you pushing out? Well, guess how many people don't want to go into your, how many drivers know they don't want to go in there? You start having these conversations with those higher ups that see that, and it's like, you don't want to go around somebody, but at the end of the day, it's like, who can I talk to that's going to understand that I really look at it in my career, like I could have made way more money than what I have. I've done well, but at the end of the day, I could have, because I could have taken shortcuts. I could have done the just now thing, right? But like when you have those relationships and they're sustainable, and you can take them wherever you're at and you can grow with them, there's nothing better than that, because you're benefiting both sides. Yes, you're paying a little bit more now, but guess what? When you're paying out the ass a year from now, I'm still right there. We may have to adjust the rate a little bit, right? Because driver maintenance or retention and everything's key. Let's have those discussions at least and see where we can fit.
Well, what's the upfront price isn't always the end cost either. So when you're shopping transactionally,
yeah,
and then they throw on accessorials or delays 60% of the time or whatever, what is it really costing to your customer who wants to buy from you, but your service stinks because you chose transactional?
And then you look at big picture. Think about this, Tony. You're thinking transactional, from the shipping end, and because you're thinking transactional and service standards are lowered, and then you start failing a little bit for this customer, how much of a hesitancy does that put on your sales guys even?
Right.
To be able to promise the customer. You got to be able to, sales guys, sit down and say, hey, I can have this in. Man, if you're confident in your shipping, you'd be like, listen, you go with us, I'll have it there by Thursday. You go with this rate, I'll have it there on Thursday. I'll set up for you, because you're confident in what you can do. But when you're not, you don't make those sales. That's money you lose there, just from that standpoint of who are your transportation. So you could go this route of this now and price now, but it all ties in together.
I worked with a sales guy today who we discussed a CPU customer who was It was always such a pain in the butt to get these carriers. The one guy fell asleep in the dock for 4 or 5 hours. I had to go wake him up, just, and he said, I want this to be prepaid freight so that we handle it, because I want you to handle it for our customer, because we do a better job than they do at logistics,
Yep.
not the other way around. He's looking for the cheapest cost, and then he hates doing business with us because he can never get the stuff. Well, remove yourself from being the obstacle and we'll take care of it for you. It's a value added service.
Yeah, I think there's one thing I want to comment on and then a question for you, TJ. The first thing is, if you're a shipper that thinks there's always going to be a carrier that'll take our freight, I just got to find them and I can be whatever I want to be. Nuclear verdicts should absolutely start getting discussed and scare the living heck out of you. Because you can't just find any carrier, because the carriers you find after you've burned enough are not the ones you're going to be wanting to pull your freight.
No.
The next question for you, TJ, is coming from the asset side. One of the things I've always I shouldn't say always, but I've learned to struggle with is this idea of, you've got to take my garbage lanes to get the good lanes. Tony, you got to take my garbage lanes to get the good lanes. And what I hate about that is common sense dictates that you're going to get a mediocre price, even on the good lanes, because I got to make up for that as a carrier somewhere else. And if I'm taking the garbage to get the good isn't going to be as good as it could have been. As a shipper, I would think I would much rather maybe work with an extra carrier or an extra service provider where each lane works for my vendor. I know it's a garbage lane, but it's a good lane for somebody else because they've got great freight coming out of there, or they're landing trucks there and they don't want to, or whatever. From an RFP perspective, how often have you had that conversation with the shipper of like, look, I know you intuitively want to give me the garbage to get the good, but if you give me the good, I can make the good excellent from a price perspective because it really works for my network. Let me go find somebody that the lanes that you consider garbage are work the best for through my brokerage division or whatever.
Yep. That's exactly right. Yep. So that's something I have a conversation with them about a lot. Number one, I always say this. I understand it. I get it. I don't want to come in and say I can handle all your freight, because I want to come in and be able to prove myself to you guys, trust, because that's what it's about, right? Can you trust us? You don't know us from everybody. I also don't know you guys. So if I just go ahead and commit to what you guys all have and I fail, that's on me. I got to worry about driver retention. I got to worry about, employee retention, fun, revenue, profit, all that stuff. And if I just take this because it's an opportunity and then I get burned, right? So let's start slow. But at the same time, I always tell them, if you want to give me the garbage lanes to start, that's fine. And that's the mindset of a lot of shippers, because again, they want to get the trust, right? They're going to give you anything great so they trust you. But at the end of the day, it's like, that may be their mindset, but they do it sometimes without talking to people, without having those conversations. It's like, I will do that, but let's set a timeline. Let's say, hey, TJ, all right, let's look at this. Let's see, you start on these lanes, and after 4 weeks, after a month, let's sit back and review where you're at. Okay, and then I want to open you up to a little bit more. Okay, if you're doing well, right? You got to be here, and then after the next maybe 4 weeks or quarter, whatever you decide as a. Then as you go, well, if you have something in your mind about a timeline and some goals that you have and where you need to be to get to better freight, because a lot of times you come into these and they say that and you run the garbage lanes and you never get anything anyways.
Yeah.
Right. So you take these losses, and is that worth it? But if you have a plan laid out ahead of time saying, hey, for this carrier, for this carrier, for this carrier, the other thing is this. I've always made sure that I've worked with, what made me good at brokerage was being a dispatcher, was being on the asset side, understanding that, shippers want assets. Why? Because they know that these assets are dispatching them directly, right? They have control of the driver. It's not going to somebody else. It can't be, the theft, the amount of theft, all that stuff is down, right? So when you explain to them, hey, listen, my experience is mainly on the asset side. The way I do brokerage is this, right? This is how I do it. This is what, blah, 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 all that stuff. But on top of that, like what you said, I could put assets on these lanes for you and drop trailers, right? And be there for you. But the one thing that you always want to have is a backup, somebody that can recover for you, right? Or somebody that can get in and run this garbage stuff for you that I can get. Because to some people, it's not garbage. That lane that people consider garbage is a perfect lane for somebody, and they'll take it for less because they get through the house right? Their wife's happy because they need something where the wife's like, hey, as long as you're back by Thursday night every week, you're fine. Blah, 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 whatever it is, right? And I can go source that. Not only can I source that, but I can get data in my system then. Now I've got data. If I'm recruiting drivers, right, a real sustainable capacity, an actual capacity, anybody can pull capacity from anywhere. But if I want to have a capacity that sticks and stays and is serviced well, I've got people running it that want to run it, that will take it for less, that will service it, that will bring the shipper Burger King in the morning to get loaded first, that will make sure they don't lose that lane because their wife's happy, their family, whatever it is, they could budget, whatever they want to do. But I got to have data to show them, hey, this is what we're getting paid on it, right? These are the ins and outs. I kind of know how the shipper and receiver work. Sometimes that takes putting another carrier on it to learn that. And then I can recruit drivers for that, because if you can't recruit drivers for a specific lane, you're just pulling them over there. Everybody wants assets. But I know just as well, I struggled more on the asset side with service and getting my dispatchers and people to actually service this customer than I do on the brokerage side, because they have no commission. They have no incentive to be any good. They show up, they drink their coffee, they make their salary, and they don't give a shit about updating a customer, right? So yes, you got assets, but your service is down, your communication's down. How can we have a balance here in which you tell me what you want, right? And I remember, and I'm just going to say this, I don't know if it matters or not, but Andrew, when you were, I think you were with KBX. I remember going to my boy up there, right? And Guardian Glass, they were like, hey, we don't do brokerages, right? We don't do assets. We want to get our assets on it. I said, hey, I can help you though. You start talking to load planners on the level though, they need help. Yes, the higher levels don't want to do it, but they need help. And I would say, hey, if we can help you when you need it, right? Because what was happening was they were asking us for trucks and they were asking us to cover, but then the higher levels then would come to us and be like, and I'd be like, hey, look, no, they're telling us, hey, you could broker this or whatever. They're like, no, it doesn't matter what they say. You know what I mean? It matters what we say. And I get it, right? That's a structure. So I proposed, hey, how about this? We have both SCACs set up, right? We separate our SCACs because of nuclear verdicts and things, right?
Yeah.
You know, if one of your trucks kills somebody, they're going to go after the brokerage. So I said, when you send over 4 loads for me to bid, I'm going to bid them transparently. I'm going to bid this load and have my SCAC after it for, you know, this first of the 4 loads, this one here, assets. And then the last 3, and then you decide what you want to do. You want to take the brokerage option, you take it. If you don't, you don't. It's not a guessing game. It's that of these 4 loads, I bid this one at assets and this one at brokerage. And if it comes down to it, you want to use the brokerage, we can. But we're going to use the same system. We're going to use the same protocols, communication-wise. No matter what it is, we're dispatching like we don't. And that opens up the reality of, hey, it's all about who you're working with, the service provided, the communication there, and what partnership you can have. Because at the end of the day, you could partner with an asset carrier and they suck. So it just is what it is.
Yeah. We've all had guys. I run into situations where it's like, hey, you know, Chicago to Atlanta is my bread and butter. To get my Chicago to Atlanta freight, you're gonna have to take Chicago to Wyoming. Yeah, I'm gonna not do well with that. Why are you asking me to take the Wyoming? If I'm gonna do better than what you have right now in Chicago to Atlanta, give me the Chicago to Atlanta. Go find somebody for Chicago to Wyoming that's their bread and butter. From a shipper perspective, I'm saying, to me, that makes more sense. Or, you know, a blended, you know, solution like you're talking about, TJ, where you've got an asset carrier, and I'm just going to pick on Schneider because they're in my backyard, right? If I got an orange truck, that's awesome. I can go do this stuff that's their bread and butter, and then I'm going to go find a white truck that's somebody else's bread and butter over here. I don't force the orange truck to do all of it. You know, that's where I've never understood that mentality from shippers at times, that why not find the best tool for the job on each lane?
Right.
You end up working with 25 lanes instead of 19, but you're going to be so far ahead.
But then again, they got to know you and what you could do. And I will tell you this, speaking of your backyard, you know, that conversation happened in person. That conversation happened with me flying to Green Bay, right? And getting out and sitting there with, and I know you remember Patty I was always scared of her. I was always like, oh my God, Patty, you know, but when you get there and you get in person and you shake their hand, you sit down and you have a conversation with them. Not only did you make the effort to come up and talk with them, but then you can have an actual logical conversation and you've got their time and you've got them in front of you. And those are things that go a long way. My old owner at Circle always used to talk about pressing the flesh. Press the flesh was his thing. He always wanted to get in front of you, right? Because you could talk all you want through emails. They don't know who the hell you are, right? They don't know what's going on. But like, there's certain things you can do if you get a read for somebody to really make that happen. And I think right now that applies to everything.
Yeah.
I think it applies to a lot of things. And I think, Andrew, I want you to touch on the, I know we only got 6 minutes. I can talk about this all day. You know, you've had experience on everything, right? But that tech, you know, you see some of these companies that are kind of going out of business that relied a little bit on tech. I know you helped with some load board and some things on tech, previous jobs and what you were at last time. But how do you find that true balance? And are you finding that people are mainly just experiment to see, or are they buying all in on it, or what do you see?
I can only talk to what I see, not what other people. So this is just me. I think the mistake is, you know, you get those emails that say we specialize in, then they list everything available under the sun as far as the ability to move freight. It's the same with tech. Hey, this tech is going to do absolutely everything for you, and it's going to replace everybody. It just becomes something that runs in the background, and you don't have to hire people. And people have bought into that to a degree. I would say, in my opinion, the tech that is going to survive and do really, really well is the tech that enables you to do better work. I want technology that allows me to take somebody who's only got 6 months in this industry and make decisions like they've been doing it for 10 years. And I think that's why you see the proliferation of Carrier Assure, Freight Validate, Highway, things like that. You're taking tech and you're distilling years of experience into, hey, and we all know Cassandra, somebody used Carrier Assure. Here's basically when you're going to want to think twice about maybe a decision you're going to make. Whereas if I'm fresh to the industry, I wouldn't know why. I wouldn't know that maybe I need to slow up and ask more questions, right? It's not telling me what to do. It's telling me to stop, think, and ask, which is a great thing. I love that. And I think technology in our industry is going to have to, the ones that are going to be successful are the ones, there's things that you can automate. You know, freight audit, bill pay, things like that can and probably should be automated. But when it comes to technology that's really going to move the needle, it's technology that's going to help new entrants to the industry operate like they've been doing it forever. And something Tony and I have talked about is, you know, look at cell phones. If I'm going to get into the cell phone industry, do I want to fight iOS and Android? Probably not. But what I want to do is I want to be able to work with both of them, stream, you know, seamlessly, and make whoever is using iOS or Android their experience better. So technology in our industry has got to start being complementary instead of replace. How do I complement what's already in a company's tech stack to let them do the work they want to do better, more efficient, lower cost, whatever, make better decisions? So I want to be the app in the Play Store or the Apple Play or the Apple whatever that allows me to work with somebody's TMS, and I don't care what that TMS is, to make better decisions or to have access to other things. That's where I see tech needing to be. You know, you start buying vehicles now and they don't come with GPS anymore. Why? Well, everybody's got CarPlay or everybody's just got Waze. We'll just connect to that. Why should I put GPS in the vehicle when you're going to do it yourself, right? That's where I think our technology needs to go. And I would caution people that when you're looking at technology, find the technology that lets your people be better rather than replace them.
Amen.
And just more efficient. I think that's the biggest thing is there's always the human side, but if you could find something that makes you more efficient, you know, and you look at, like you said, you know, being able to adapt to everything. You know, I look at the difference between HubSpot and Salesforce, right? Salesforce established, they're in other industries too, right? And you get what you get. There's no changing it, right? HubSpot's, you know, it says, hey, you know, I can adapt it. This is an example. You know, I can integrate with this, or I can add this, or hey, if you have an option, send it over and we could try to write that up and maybe add it to it, right? Yeah. Same thing with your TMS, same thing with anything that you have. But if you could create efficiency and not just lean directly on tech to make something happen. I talk to people all the time, you know, they're like, oh, well, you know, we've got this great technology for tracking, you know, okay, well, I bet you do. But guess what? It doesn't matter. You may look at it and say, oh yeah, guess what? One day when you're watching it and the tracking looks great, you don't say anything, and then it ends up not being what you thought it was. You're going to learn that, hey, it's still probably best to give them a call every once in a while, or double check or follow through on this or whatever. You got to still have that, but it makes it more efficient. Really just create efficiency to be able to do your human. It really frees you up to be able to do more human interaction. It's not about one or the other. It's about, you know, benefiting from what really is what matters more.
I mean, there's still a ton of freight that gets moved in this country based off Excel, right, as the TMS, right?
Yeah.
There's guys like Tony crunching the Excel spreadsheet, but the only reason why that works is because email is available. You couldn't do that without email,
Right.
Yep.
right? So I would say if you're looking to get into tech and develop tech, or if you're looking to bring tech onto your company, look for email. And I'm not saying stick with Excel by any stretch. I'm just saying look for email. Look for those things that are force multipliers, right? Those things that allow your people to be more efficient. And it's a dirty word, but to say do more work with less, right? It's the more a person can get done in a day, the better off you are, because then you get things done to completion. You don't go home at the end of the day with 5 check calls that still need to be done, and they'll probably be okay. Those types of things.
Or you stay late.
Yeah, but those tech ideas, TJ, to get back to your point, is like there's a lot of really good tech out there. There's a lot of really interesting things that maybe you are in the business of looking for a new TMS. By all means, don't just default to legacy because it's always there or whatever. Guys at Zoom, guys at TIE, guys at
Red Rocket.
Want to go? They've got some great stuff. Go and look at it. That's fine, but don't think that because you've brought tech, whatever that wrapper is, I can let half of my team go. It's just not
right. Yep. Matter of fact, if anything, you'd want to keep your team because that tech could increase their productivity and you get more out of them without having to hire more. It's not like getting rid of them. It's getting more out of without having to hire more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's the opposite.
The cap on your revenue is the hours in your day, more or less, right? So if your average, broker on the floor is, let's call it 875 to $1.2 million in revenue a year, top line. Well, if I can get that average broker at $1.5 million, one, that broker's a lot happier, right? Because they're getting better rips, or getting more rips, maybe not even better, but more, right? They're getting a bigger commission check because they're doing more business. But also I didn't have to hire somebody. So now I'm doing the work of 30 with 25. That's a win for everybody.
And even if they're not getting bigger rips, what if it's because the technology provided allows them to get updates in, PODs faster, the billing is better, because a lot of times in brokerage, you're not paid unless it's billed.
Yep.
Right? It doesn't get billed unless there's a rate confirmation and a POD involved. And if you have technology that allows you to receive PODs faster, upload them faster, get your billing process faster, you get paid better.
Yeah,
right?
Let me give you an example on that. I have a broker, and I know a guy that does this as well.
You do?
Folks that are really good at this. So let's say you have some legacy TMS that's garbage, and you also have to account for those packing slips and proof of deliveries and bill ladings. Well, if your customer or your carrier is uploading them into your TMS, the shipper's never going to see them because it's going to go to the corporate office and go for billing and all that. But if you have a carrier or a broker or a friend in the business, like I have with 2 or 3 of my, great carriers, partners, that will send me a picture of that cell phone is that piece of technology that bridges that gap, right? Mm-hmm. I can get a picture of that POD so I can print it out, scan it in, and I know it went. I don't have to wait for the TMS system that's dinosaur to catch up.
What about something better than that? I remember we had a thing we created in our TMS to give shippers access.
Yeah.
So they could go into, they had a link that they could go in. Now they can only view so much, but they could click on the load. Sure. They could see the live tracking. They could see the updates in there. So if they send an update and they go, wait, remember, it delivers here. They could see the tracking, they see the updates, and then there's a billing section. They could go in there. They could see if the POD is already updated and all that stuff.
Yep.
There you go. That's even more efficient.
The TMS company I worked for, was built that out, and it was, I don't want to say, it was great. Because wearing the hats I've worn, I can see the value in that, right? If you've just been a broker and you don't understand the shipper side of it, it's like, well, why do I care, right? That's not my job. The shipper will call me if they got a question. Well, how great is it to not get those calls all the time because they can look in their portal, they're getting updates, things like that. So I can go do generating things. I can go do other value-added things.
No, but sometimes you don't have to have the shipper have to manually go in there. You could create, there's somewhere you could create a shipper update within the load. You go in the load in your TMS, it says shipper update. You hit the button and you can tailor it to, depending on the customer, what they want. And you hit the button, it automatically emails them with
same
right from their team with everything that's got, the tracking update, the appointments, all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
we
right
set
you're
it up
saying
where
there's better
we
than
track
Manosphere out
updates
there?
to an email address, and whoever, and you can set it at the load level, you can set it at the enterprise level, obviously, but whoever wanted to know that, because
Yep.
let's be frank, a lot of shippers, we all love to have tracking. We want to know where all our loads are at any given time, but at the other hand, we don't want all of that information all at the same time. I want to know it when I want to know it, not necessarily all the time, right? So sometimes those
Right.
emails get roundly ignored and email rules get set up. I've done it. We've all done it. And then it's what happened. Oh, yeah, I got to go search. Tony's laughing because we've talked about this, but it's those things of at least provide the
File a file.
visibility. If you use it, great. If you don't, great. But
Yep.
that's what technology is going to be, and that's my biggest thing with technology again is use it as a force multiplier. Don't replace. Take advantage. But again, it goes right back to where we very first started this whole conversation with intellectually curious. If you're not out there looking around or paying attention, and that's where things like LinkedIn and Twitter and conversations like this help people is like, man, I never knew that was available. I didn't know that was out there. Well, now I can go ask some questions, and I'm empowered to ask questions. Have people that can do that. Listen to that. Hey, guess what? I just found this really cool technology for a TMS system that is, going to free up a lot of hours for our folks. At least take a look.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And visibility is transparency. Transparency leads to trust. And I always tell people that, like, just communicate. Like, you got to just communicate. They understand things happen no matter what it is, but you got to communicate, because if you're not communicating, or if they don't have visibility, or they know they don't have access or transparency, they're going to question it. If you don't answer when they ask for an update, they're thinking worst case scenario.
Yep.
This person's not answering because something's going wrong. When
And
really
the
nothing's
trust
going
level
wrong, you
has
just
to be
didn't
all the
answer.
way up here.
Yeah, so like I'll be like, hey, they reached out, they wanted an ETA or whatever. They're like, oh, I'm still working on it to try to get the ETA. I'm like, well, let them know that, because if you don't, it's been an hour and they're going, well, shit, this person probably lost the truck. They're trying to recover it. They don't know what's going on. They're going to think worst case scenario.
As a shipper, as a broker, it doesn't matter where you are. I'm always less worried about what the news is, and I'm more worried about not getting the news, right? When I'm a broker, the last thing I want is my shipper finding out from the carrier what's going on and then asking me. I want to know first. If I'm a carrier, I got to let my people know. If I'm the shipper and things are late on the dock, 5 people called in sick, 2 forklifts broke down. Hey, it happens, right? The slack, you want people to cut you in whatever part you're in that role. Be prepared to cut slack to everybody else in your industry too, right? Because stuff does happen. But at least let people know. I don't want to show up and all of a sudden say, yeah, that load got pushed 2 days, and we let the broker know 4 days ago that it was no good.
Well, and that's the thing. If you're looking out for the great example, one here, because we're over time, but we have a load. It was supposed to deliver on Wednesday of next week. Okay. Driver calls, says, hey, the load that my back call for that, right, for another customer was supposed to pick up on Wednesday. They just said it's going to be ready. They need it to pick up Tuesday. All right. I know this is going to an Amazon, as the delivery was Amazon, and there's a delivery appointment. Is there any way we could get a Monday or Tuesday delivery? So the rep reached out and they say, hey, they just asked if we could have this, if we could get this. I said, and they're like, I'm going to work on recovering it, and because it's supposed to pick up tomorrow, and then we'll see if we can just get a different carrier. I said, no. I said, they're like, I don't know what else to do. Like, I don't want to like give it back or anything. I said, come over here. I said, we're going to call him. So I call him. I say, hey, Ryan. I said, hey, listen, we got a driver on this load. This is the situation. He wanted his whole goal of going all the way to California was for him to get this back call to get it back. Okay. That's what made sense. That's why we put it on there. It's good capacity. However, they need it picked up on Tuesday. Now, is there any way to get a Monday or Tuesday? Well, I'm not sure. We don't, I haven't really dealt with changing to Amazon deliveries or anything. I said, you work on it. The reason I'm calling you now is that, if we can't get the driver on it, we probably have to pull him off, because that's the whole point of us putting him on there. Okay. And I want to be respectful and give you time to recover it if you need it, or, at least give you time to recover it while we also work to recover it as well. But, at least you have the option then, knowing of what's going on. And then you let us know. You reach out, let us know. And okay, he's like, yeah, send me an email so it reminds me or whatever. So I sent him an email, hey, per our conversation, this is what's going on. And he's like, hey, I ended up getting a delivery appointment for Tuesday or whatever, right? Like, he could have probably recovered it, maybe even made, got a better rate or whatever. But like, he wasn't mad. He knows things happen. And that's what I told the rep. She's like, well, he's going to think that, this. I go, he's not going to think shit. If you ever heard the amount of excuses that people get told
Yeah.
that are just terrible. And not only are they terrible, but they're last minute. They're after it was even supposed to pick up. It was when they reached out 2 hours after the pickup and go, and you're like, oh, my driver broke down. Okay, that would have been nice to know earlier. We're calling them a day ahead of time, literally, with a situation in which we have time. And that builds that trust that, like, hey, man, these guys I really like that they did that because that makes sense. I could recover it if we can't.
Yep.
You know,
the communication gives you room to
So-
navigate. And, and that's all there is. It's, hey, I got a problem, click. It's not, I got a problem, I'm working it. I'm letting you know so you can work it too. Let's meet in the middle somewhere, and be done.
Yep. You gotta have
Proactive
room to
communication,
adjust. So everybody make sure that, we are all on the same page here, I think. And, great conversation.
Oh.
Andrew, I love having you on. Like I said, these are the type of podcasts we could go all night. But
Yeah, that
Tony,
was the fastest hour I've had in a long time.
Tony, you need to tell me who your internet provider is, and I'm gonna make some calls. We're gonna get you adjusted.
Xfinity.
I'll pay for half of it, literally, just to get this podcast better, because
Seriously.
it's killing me, brother.
I'll make a call.
Yeah, give him a jangle. All right. Hey,
Teal,
Andrew,
thank
thanks
you.
for coming on, man.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
honestly.
anytime. Always great conversation, good people.
Yep.
I don't know about
Thanks,
the
guy. I
people part.
appreciate it.
See you guys.
All right. Talk to you.